Alright, let's go ahead and address changing out this potentiometer. I'm going to go ahead and loosen it here. Okay, one thing I want to do before I tuck this away is I want to have a look at the at the potentiometer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use this potentiometer here. Alright, now as you can see, this has a D end on it. Alright, it's slotted, and this one has a knurled end. So what I'm going to have to do is adapt this to a knurled end. And so what I've done is I've taken a knurled end from a donor potentiometer. Alright, so this will be up here. I've put a little piece of brass sleeving on it, which is a 1/4 inch, which is the same as diameter as this, and then we'll go ahead and button this up with a larger sleeve of brass over it. I'll show you that when I get to it, but basically we want this to be the same size as this potentiometer here, or the shaft has to be the same size. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and just measure the shaft, and the shaft on this happens to be 1.75 inches, so 1 3/4 inches from the base of the shaft up to the end. Alright, so we're going to use that measurement, and we're going to reproduce that length when we make up this new potentiometer. Alright, just a quick look at the on-off volume potentiometer. I'm using a 10K audio taper potentiometer with a switch. On this lug here we have the grounds. The brown is the ground to the Bluetooth, or sorry, the black is the ground to the Bluetooth, the brown is the ground to the amplifier. Here is the signal input to the amplifier, and here's the signal input from the Bluetooth. We look over here, here's our lugs for our switch. I just have 2 wires coming off of these. One of these wires will go to the power input, and the other one will go to the Bluetooth board, or Bluetooth amp board, so that we can turn the radio on and off, and also control the volume from the front switch. Alright, now this I'm going to mount into where the original on-off volume switch was. One thing, if you've never done this before and you are modifying the shaft, do yourself a favor and mount this first before you start to glue the shaft pieces in, because the nut for this will not fit over the connector pieces. Believe me, I did this the first time I tried to do this, and it was a mess. I had to take this whole thing apart and then and rebuild it. So I'll show you how that's done here in just a second. Okay, so the potentiometer is mounted, and the next thing we need to do is build out the shaft so that it'll reach out through the cabinet, and we can connect the knob. I showed you this before. Here is the end from a donor shaft, from a donor potentiometer, the end of the shaft from a donor potentiometer that fits our knobs, and I've glued that onto a piece of brass tubing, just with some JB weld. And now what I'm going to do is take this little larger piece of brass tubing, and what we're going to do is just connect this all together so that we've extended the shaft of the potentiometer, and it will reach out through the cabinet, and we can put the knob on there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and JB weld this all together. I've measured this so that it's the proper distance, and I'll come back and show you that when it's done. Okay, so we have everything connected to the backer board now. Alright, so here we have our amplifier Bluetooth board we talked about. This is our power jack, and this is our external input. Alright, so let's trace the power here. So the power comes in, the positive comes into this lug here, the power jack, goes out through this wire here to the switch on the potentiometer, comes back out here and onto the amplifier Bluetooth board. Alright, the negative just comes straight into here. Alright, signal path, we have our signal received by our Bluetooth receiver, or through our auxiliary input, comes into the Bluetooth board. It goes out here through this wire here out to our potentiometer, which is our volume control, back out here to our amplifier, and then out to our speaker. Alright, you can see on the back here is our DC input and our auxiliary input. Alright, I've just gone ahead and put a couple screws here to hold the board on, and the board, I don't know if you can see it, but it just has a couple of little nylon standoffs. Alright. Okay, as for the front of the radio, again, you see nothing's been altered on the chassis at all. The only thing that we did is replace the original on-off volume potentiometer with this one that's more appropriate. Now, I originally had a couple of LEDs on a strip over here to light up the dial. But the problem with that is that the LEDs weren't bright enough, so I've just run a strip here across the top, and that provides a much better illumination of the dial, and it's still not too bright. This is just a 5-volt LED strip. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to get it now into the chassis, or get the chassis into the cabinet, and then we will take a final listen. Okay, so we're all done. Here's the radio, all put back in the chassis. You can see we have a power connected up to our DC power jack. It's our auxiliary input jack. And nothing structurally has been changed on this radio that cannot be undone. So really the only thing that we did on this is we removed the power cord, and we took out the on-off potentiometer, on-off volume potentiometer, and we tucked it in the chassis and replaced it with a on-off volume potentiometer that will work with our new Bluetooth board. All right, so the knobs function. I don't know if you can see that from this angle, but this changes the tuner. Now, of course, that has no function now because it's no longer an AM radio, but it retains its original function. That original handle still works, and we have our on-off and volume. So let's go ahead and turn this on. You can see we have the dial lit up here now. And let's go ahead and pair it, and then listen to what it sounds like. All right, so that turned out pretty good. This thing sounds wonderful and looks great, and we were able to do this in a non-destructive fashion. So this is all ready to go back to its owner, and for many more years of enjoyment. Well guys, I appreciate, as always, I appreciate you watching, and thanks for watching.